Okay, so in this chapter, this is chapter 4 in the training manual, we're going to look into ways to use FME Server to respond to real-time events using the notification service and message streaming. So I'll move on to page 4-3 here. So when we talk about real-time in this context, we mean setting up FME Server to either receive incoming information in the form of notifications, messages, and alerts, or having it send out information in a similar format. So the type of information that is processed in real time generally involves small amounts of data that can arrive one at a time, such as the case of getting maybe location data from a vehicle tracking system. That system might ping or send a little notification out with the current location of a vehicle, say every 5 minutes, and you can track that through time. The other type of information that can be processed in real time would be information that can come in as a continuous stream. So this might be information from something like a temperature sensor, so you always know what the current temperature is in a specific area. So it's always streaming information directly back to you, rather than sending it in discrete packages. So inside FME, we handle these two types of real-time data in two slightly different ways. So the first way we deal with this is using this idea of notifications. So inside FME, we use notifications to process messages that come through one at a time. The notification service is what we use to listen for incoming messages, and it can also be used to trigger an action in response to a message or send out a message in response to something that happens on the server. So the notification service in this case can actually deal with incoming messages that are coming from, say, something like a vehicle tracking system or anything like that. Or it can also be used to send out notifications from FME Server to some other receiving application. On the other side, we have this concept of message streams. So FME Server handles continuous streams of data using what we call message streams. These are not set up using the notification service, but instead they are handled by a set of transformers that are specifically designed for this type of messaging. So configuration for this would involve setting up a workspace that would run continuously with transformers inside that would constantly either listen for or send out messages. So we're going to take a closer look at both these types of ways of handling real-time data in this chapter. I'm just going to start with looking at the notification service inside FME Server. So first of all, what is a notification? A notification essentially is a message or an alert that informs someone or something that a particular event has occurred. There are two forms of notifications inside FME Server. So we have incoming notifications that would alert FME Server when an external event has occurred, so the server can take some kind of an action in response. And then on the other side, we have outgoing notifications, in which FME Server can send alerts to users when an event has occurred on the server itself. So maybe when a workspace is finished running, or possibly if an error has occurred. So the notification service is what handles these incoming and outgoing notifications. So notifications are meant to be used for sending a message to trigger something like an FME workspace in response to a particular event. It is for sending short, discrete messages. So if you're going to be working with a steady stream of data, or if you're dealing with, say, more than one message per second, you should consider using message streaming instead. So here we'll just take a quick overview of what the notification service itself looks like. So it is made up of several different components, as shown in the diagram on this page. So we're on page 4-5 if you want to take a closer look yourself. So what we have here, we have FME Server in the middle in this diagram. And on either side, we have different types of clients. So these would be applications that can either send a notification into FME Server, or that can receive a notification that comes out of FME server. So for example, you might have something like a database that's set up with a trigger that can send a notification to FME server when there's an update to a particular table. So in this case, the database itself would be the client, since it's sending a notification into FME server. This type of client would be considered or called a publisher. So it publishes notifications to FME server. On the other side here, FME server can send a notification to some other system or directly to an end user. So for example, it might be able to send an email out to a user when a workspace is finished running. Any clients on the receiving end of this would be called subscribers, as they're subscribed to a particular notification from FME server. So they're listening to anything that's coming out of the server. Inside FME server itself, we have components that are designed either for being able to listen for and receive notifications from an external client, or to send out notifications to an external client here. So we have publications on one side that listen for incoming notifications. So a publication would listen for information from a publisher. And then on the other side, we have subscriptions, which are able to send out notifications to a subscriber. So next inside here, we have this idea of a topic. So a topic in this case is essentially a subject that describes what a particular notification is about. So it basically describes a notification theme. So if an incoming notification comes from a database, the FME server will be able to receive that using a publication, and it'll know it's related to maybe a database update. So it'll publish to the database update topic. So the server knows exactly what the specific notification is related to, so it knows which actions to take in response to that. And the final concept we have inside here is this idea of a protocol. So a protocol inside FME server is essentially a method that FME server can use to either send or receive notifications. So in this case, protocols would be things like email, for example. So you can have an external client send an email into FME server using an email protocol, and FME server can understand that because it's listening on this protocol, essentially. So it can take that information from the email, publish it up to the topic that's related to that specific email, and then take an action in response to a notification coming in on that particular protocol. So protocols inside FME consist of a set of predefined objects in the FME server architecture. So there's no actual way to create new protocols in the web interface. So what you have basically is what you get. So you'll have a list of the different protocols that FME can use to either receive notifications or send out notifications on the other side. So the training manual here gets into more detail on each of these. So if you're interested, you could read through that yourself. So this just gets into protocols a little bit more. So here on page 4-8, sorry, it's the next one here, 4-9 here. We're just going to take a closer look at one protocol in particular inside FME server. So there are a lot to take a look at, so you can see the full list here. These are protocols for receiving incoming messages. So we have things like the Amazon Simple Notification Service, the queuing service. We've got a directory watch protocol that can actually watch a directory and look for new files or updated files. JMS, UDP, WebSockets, and all that. So you're not going to be able to get into too much detail on all of these, but we'll take a closer look at some of the more commonly used ones in FME server. So the first one we'll take a look at here is the email protocol. So this is the most commonly used type of notification inside FME server. So email itself is a protocol that's available for use by both publications and subscriptions. So this means that FME server has the ability to both send and receive emails. So there are two types of email-related protocols. The first one here we have is called email. It simply has the ability to send or receive emails through an email server built into FME server. And then we have IMAP as well, which allows FME server to connect to an email account on another server and then pass new emails onto FME server. So the IMAP protocol can essentially allow FME server to check for new emails on another email account. So setting up an email publication. So as we can, just a quick reminder, as a publication is part of the notification service that allows FME server to listen for incoming notifications from a client that is acting as a publisher. So setting up an email publication will allow FME server to receive an email sent either directly to the server or to another email account that the server has access to through the IMAP protocol. So here we're looking at the email protocol itself, so it goes through SMTP. Essentially the way this is set up, you decide, you give your publication a name so you can identify it later. You select which topic you want this particular publication to publish to. So this essentially defines the theme that the email is related to, so what this email is about. So in this case, it's dealing with road conditions. Next, you select the protocol, so here email is selected. And then the final option when you set up the email protocol is to select an email username. So any email that is sent to roadinfo@servername.com will trigger this particular publication. So it'll take that email information, publish it to the road conditions topic, and then FME server can take that information and maybe run a workspace in response to that. So FME server itself has a built-in email server that can be used to actually receive emails that are sent directly to the server. So we have configuration steps for setting that up in our reference manual. On the EC2 machines that you're currently using, this has already been done. So we're actually going to be able to send emails directly to these servers on our Amazon machines. So this just gets into the information about the other email protocol. So this is IMAP publication. It works in a conceptually similar way, except instead of being able to send an email directly to FME server, you can send an email to some other arbitrary email account. So maybe if you have a Gmail account set up or an email account just within your own internal email server, you can have FME server connect to that account. So you just give it the server host name, the email account and password, and then it can actually log into that email account and look for new emails on a regular interval. Whenever a new email is found, it can pull in that information and trigger a notification in exactly the same way that the email publication would as well. So with that, let's take a look at an exercise where we're going to set up the notification service to be able to receive an email and take some action in response to that. So in the next few exercises, we're going to be working on building an email-driven workflow in FME server. So in this part, this exercise, we're going to work on setting up the topic and publication. So we're going to create a publication to listen for incoming emails, and we're also going to set up a topic to define the theme on which all these notifications will be flowing through. So for this, we'll take the first step here. So we're on page 4-12. If you want to follow along in the training manual, we're on exercise 4A, page 4-12. So the first step here, we're going to set up, or we're going to create a topic for our notification system. So to create a topic, we have to do that through the FME server web interface. So open up your web browser, and inside the FME server interface, go to the notification section from the left-hand side. So inside here, you'll see a list of all the topics that came predefined with the server. And what we're going to do is create our own brand new topic here. So again, a topic essentially acts as a subject line for any notifications that are coming in and out of the server. So click on New to create a new topic, and we'll configure this topic here. So in this case, let's call this image processing. So we're going to be slowly building up an image processing system where our users can send an email into the server and get some information back from FME server itself. So the topic name here is basically the subject line, and then we can give it a short description so we know what these notifications are related to. For topic for triggering an image processing workspace. So as this says, we're going to be using this topic to trigger a workspace later on when we start building this workflow up. So once you've got your topic name, image processing, and your description written in, click OK to create the topic. So topics themselves are fairly simple. It's just a text name. So the next step that we're going to complete here is to create a publication to listen for email coming into the server. So from the notifications section in FME server, click on the Publications tab. You'll see there's no publications in there by default. And let's create a new publication. So click the New button to do this. And let's give our publication a name. So I'm going to call this Email Receiver. Under Topics to Publish to, we're going to use that topic that we just created. So click the drop-down and select Image Processing. So when we finally set up this publication, any email that comes in to this particular user is going to go to the image processing topic. Next, we'll select a protocol. So click the drop-down, and we're going to select Email SMTP in this case. So we're going to be using the email server built into FME server to receive the incoming email messages. And then finally, we want to define an email username. So you can make this anything that you want. I'm going to use my own name in this case, so I'm going to say Laura K. Just remember what your username is, because we're going to be needing to email our servers to this particular username. So the email address that we're going to be able to use once we click OK to create this publication is email username, so whatever you set in here. So in my case, Laura K at theservername.com. So we're going to find the public server name, and we're going to send an email directly to that. So when you're finished setting this up, just remember your username so you can use this later. Click OK to create the publication. You should now have a publication called Email Receiver, protocol is email, publishing to the image processing topic. We'll skip the instructions for setting up through the IMAP protocol. You can do this if you'd like to try this out, if you want FME server to check your own email account. And then next, what we're going to do is we're going to test out this workflow. So we want to be able to tell when we send this email into the server, we want to know that FME server was actually able to receive it and was able to trigger our image processing topic without a problem. So to test that out, we're going to use some functionality that's new for FME 2014, and this is the topic monitoring. So click on the monitoring link on the left-hand side in FME server, and we want to select our image processing topic as the topic to monitor. So click on the drop-down and select image processing. So what happens in this window is this actually uses WebSockets. And what it does is it's listening for any traffic related to this topic. And whenever anything comes in or this topic is triggered, the information that was pushed to that topic or published to this topic is going to be displayed directly in the browser, so we can see when FME server does receive our email, we can see exactly what it sees from that email as well. So next what we want to do is actually send an email directly to our server. So if you remember your username, what we want to do next is actually get the rest of the address. So since we're using Amazon machines and each of ours is different, it's not going to be the same address as in here, but it'll look similar. So to find the address for your Amazon machine, what you need to do is open up the, just go to the main screen of your Amazon machine. I'm just going to close a few windows here. So once you can see the desktop, you should see a link on the desktop itself to a Chrome page. It says your computer DNS name. This will be the name that we're going to use to send our emails in. So double click on that link. So it's your computer DNS name from the desktop on your Amazon machines. Open that up and you'll get a page that'll look something like this. You'll see the public host name for your Amazon machine. Each one will be different, so make sure you open up your own. When you open that up, just copy everything from EC2 all the way to directly to .com and copy that. So the email that we're going to use to send an email into our server is going to be the username that we set when we set up our publication at ec2 all these numbers .compute1.amazonaws.com. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it'll work. So once you've got that information, so just copy that out. Open up your email browser, so whatever you use to send out emails yourself. So I've just got Gmail open here. And go to compose a new email. So I'm going to send this to my username that I selected. So that's Laura K. at my amazonmachine.com. I can say anything I want in the subject. So again, the email that you use is the username that you set up when you created that email publication at your amazonmachine.com. And you can get the address from your Amazon machine from that link on the desktop on these machines. When you have that and you've built up your email, I'm just going to copy this so I have it for later. Just send in the email to the server. Once you've sent that, take a look at the topic monitoring, and we should see within a minute or two that FME server has received that email that we sent into it. So if everything worked correctly, it should bounce back from your email and you should see something come up in your topic monitoring. So you can see here my email has gone through. And you can take a look inside here. So this information that appears in this window is all the information that was published to my image processing topic when the publication I just created to listen for incoming emails received that email. So what it did is it received the email and it grabbed all the information about that email out and published it as JSON into the image processing topic. So you can see here I've got my email publisher subject. So this is the subject line I put in that email I sent. I've got the content. So this is the content of the email itself. And I can see who I sent it to. So I sent that to my username at amazon.com. And it tells me who sent it. So this is the email address that I sent that email from. So I'm just going to do a quick show of hands. Who was able to get that to work successfully? Was everyone able to see something come up in their topic monitoring window? Okay, that's great. Looks like most people have it. So if anyone does see any problems, if you saw your email bounce, just send us a quick message and we can help you get that sorted. We're going to be sending more emails into our servers later on as we continue with these exercises. So it's good to make sure that this first part is working correctly. Okay, so great. So we've now configured FME server to listen for incoming emails and publish that to a topic. So what we're going to do in the next few exercises is continue on this workflow and actually take this information from this topic and use that inside a workspace and have FME server make use of this information and do some processing based on content in the email that we send in. So we just finished off that exercise where we were able to create a publication to listen for an incoming email. And then we could see the information that was published to our image processing topic using the topic monitoring page inside FME server. So that was a pretty simple and straightforward notification setup there. We simply had an email publication and a topic. So that particular scenario didn't actually do anything with the notification message content itself. So if you want to make use of the message itself in some way, what you can do is you can add an FME workspace into the workflow between the publication and subscription. So setting up a workspace like this, so it looks something like this diagram at the bottom of this page. Got a publication, pushes to a topic, which in turn triggers a workspace that can run and then do something in response. So when you set up a workspace like this, it basically turns it into a subscriber to the incoming publication. It can read the content of the notification message directly in almost any format, do some kind of processing with that information, and then send the results on to a set of subscribers within FME server. So in this case, so something like this diagram, the workspace can act as both a subscriber and a publisher. So it listens to information coming in and can publish information to a topic within FME server. So additionally, of course, you can have a workspace that doesn't necessarily have to be right in the middle of a process like this. So you could have a workspace set up to only listen for something coming in on a topic. So you could just have the workspace trigger and run and do nothing with the output. So to just run as it is and won't necessarily trigger a second topic in this workflow. Additionally, you can do something similar on the other side. So you can create a workspace that simply triggers a notification topic. So it doesn't have to be both a sender and receiver. It can be either just a sender or just a receiver as well. So to set up a workspace as a subscription, so to set up a workspace to listen for traffic on a particular topic and be triggered when that topic is published to. So to set this up, you need to connect that workspace to a particular topic so that when that topic is triggered, the workspace is going to run in response. So a workspace can be set up to receive messages by registering it with a notification service that's shown in this screenshot here. So you can register that when you go to publish that workspace to FME server. So inside here, there are two parameters that you need to set. So this is what the parameter dialog for that looks like. The first is the subscribe topics. So this tells FME server which topic this workspace is essentially connected to. And the second is the notification reader. So if you want to do anything with the content of the notification that is sent in, you need to have that set up. You need to set up the workspace to read that content in. So what this property or this parameter can do is it tells FME server that one particular reader inside your workspace is configured to be able to understand the content of a notification topic. And what FME server will do is it'll take the topic that's been published, or take the information that's been published to that topic, and it's going to push it in as the source data set for the notification reader that's been set up. So in this case, there's a text line reader that's in this workspace that's being published, and we're telling FME server that the notification content should go into this text line reader. And then inside the workspace, you can set up some transformers that can take that information and parse it out and use that in the workflow itself. So once a workspace has been published and registered with the notification service, you'll see a new subscriber appear in the notifications section of the web interface. So what'll happen is you'll go through the publishing steps, you'll set all this up. Once the workspace is up there, you'll see the workspace appears in the workspace repository. And you'll also see a new subscription added. So it'll look something like this, your username that you used to log in with the server, the repository name, and the workspace name. The protocol here that's used is the push protocol. And if you take a look inside the information for that, you'll see a target URL. That URL will correspond to the URL of the workspace itself. So whenever information is published to this Parks Updater topic in this subscription, that information is going to be pushed out and it's going to trigger this workspace by triggering this URL. So in the next exercise here on the next page, we're going to take a look at creating a workspace that can be triggered by any traffic on our image processing topic here. So for this example, we're just going to create a very simple workspace just to make sure it's going to be triggered properly and just to see and work through the process of registering a workspace with the notification service. So for this, we can start off, we're on page 4-20, and this is exercise 4B. So let's open up Workbench, and we're going to start with a brand new workspace. So if you have a workspace open, just close the main tab. Once you're back at the Start tab, click on Blank Workspace. So we're going to start with nothing in this workspace. And then in here, just place down a creator transformer. So just type in the name, creator, and put that on the canvas. So this is a very, very basic workspace. It just has a creator that does nothing. So let's save this workspace now. And I'll just put this into my FME workspaces folder, that's okay. And I'll call this exercise 4b.fmw. And we'll save. And then let's publish this workspace up to FME server. So all we're doing now is testing our workflow to make sure we can trigger this workspace. So go to File, Publish FME server, use direct connection, admin, username, password. I'll publish this again to the training repository. And we'll register with the notification service here. So you notice when you check on the notification service, it's highlighted red, indicating that we need to set up some properties before we can use this workspace with this service. So click Edit. Under the service properties, we're going to need to configure this to subscribe to the topic that we created earlier. So under Subscribe to Topics, click the Browse button. This sends a query up to FME server and gets the full list of topics that exist up there. And we'll select the image processing topic. Once you've selected that, click OK. For the notification reader, we're going to leave that blank right now. We don't have a reader in our workspace, so we're not going to make use of the notification content at this stage, but we're going to have this workspace triggered when this topic is published to anyway. We can take a look at some of the other properties in here if we want to make sure everything's okay. So you have these notify on job completion. So if we wanted to have this workspace send a notification out to another topic when it finishes running, we could set this up to do it here. We're not going to bother with that at this stage. And then under advanced, we can see kind of what format or content format would be used if a notification was sent out from this workspace, and what the username and password that we log in with the server would be. So once you've set up the topic to the subscribe to topics as the image processing topic for this workspace, click OK. And now we're able to publish to FME server. Okay, so just click OK on this. We can ignore this warning for now. I think this is a misconfiguration on these Amazon machines. It's safe to ignore. It's going to work anyway. So you can see it's successfully published. And yeah, just don't worry about that for now. So at this point, let's go back into FME server. So we'll take a look in the web interface and we'll see what's changed since we've published that workspace. So first thing, I just want to show you something inside repositories. We can go into our training repository and take a look at that exercise that we just published. And you'll see it's registered with the notification service, but you notice it doesn't have the configure and run buttons this time. This is because workspaces run through the notification service work in a slightly different way. They're only triggered by topics through publications and subscriptions. So they're not triggered, they can't be triggered manually here. So if you wanted to go in and you wanted to test a workspace that you'd published that you were registering with the notification service, you might want to register it with the job submitter service as well. So the next thing we'll look at is under notifications. And let's take a look in the subscriptions tab now. And we should see at the very top, you should have a brand new subscription that's been created. You see it's the push protocol, and we've got this subscribed to the image processing topic. So what's happening here is whenever something publishes information to the image processing topic, this subscription is going to send a push to this particular URL. So you'll see the URL is to our server host name, the notification service, training is the repository, exercise 4b.fmw. So this is actually going to trigger that exercise 4b workspace whenever something triggers the image processing topic. So that's how it works, and this is automatically created when we publish that workspace to the server. So next, what we want to do is test this workflow. So when we send an email into FME server now, what should happen is we've got a publication that listens for that email. So it's going to receive the email that we send in. It's going to take the content and publish it to our image processing topic. When that topic is triggered, it's going to tell this subscription to run. So a subscription is going to send a push out to the URL for our exercise 4b workspace, and it's going to run the workspace in response to that. So let's test out this full workflow now. So go back to your email sender application, and we'll compose a new email. So send that to the same address, so your username at yourmachine.com. I'm going to give it a different subject so I can tell it from the so I can see the difference. Testing 2 maybe. And then I'll send this in. And then what we'll see in the background, our publication will work. Our publication will see that email. It's going to trigger a topic, which in turn will trigger our workspace as a subscription. So if I give this a couple minutes to run, and then we can double check. So the way to tell if this is working this time is that we can actually check our job history to see if exercise 4b actually was run in response to that notification. So I'm going to head over to jobs now. And let's take a look at the completed jobs. So you should see in the top of your list, you'll see exercise 4b was run. Timestamp is approximately now, so that looks good. And we had a successful translation. So I'll do a quick check again. Was everyone able to see that workspace run in response to your incoming email? You just please raise your hand if you were able to see it. And again, just let us know if you do have any issues. Okay, looks like the majority of people have that working. Great. Okay, so the next step in our process, so what we've got now is we've had that workspace simply triggered when that topic was published to. This workspace that we've just created with just the creator transformer doesn't do anything with the notification content at this stage. So what we want to do in the next couple exercises is add some logic into our workspace to actually be able to take that information from the topic, that notification content, and do something with it. So we're on page 4, 4-22 in the training manual now. Essentially, this just talks about dealing with message content. So the way that you would take information coming in from a topic is to add a reader into your workspace that is configured to be able to pull in that information. Typically, the reader that you would use for this type of situation would be something like the text line reader. So it can take arbitrary text and pull it into the workspace. And then what you can do is use a series of different transformers to take that information, that text, and parse it out and do something useful with that. I think my monitoring is probably cleared. I just want to have an example of a topic. That's okay. Okay. So content format, so that typically comes through as JSON or as XML. I'm actually just going to send a quick email just to trigger this off so I have something to show you. Okay. So that's the notification content. So we see that in the notifications panel here when we're looking at the content of the notification that's published or pushed out to the topic that we'd created. So what we can do when that text comes in as either JSON or XML is we can use transformers like the JSON flattener or the XML flattener to actually take this content and pull it out into attributes that we can then use in further transformers within our workflow. So you can see here in this case this is JSON that's coming through, so I could use a text line reader to read this information in, and then a JSON flattener to take each of these little attributes and pull that into actual attributes inside my workspace. So you can see here in the email publication, we have access to the subject line of the email, we have access to the content of the email itself, and we know who sent the email. So this is particularly valuable information if we wanted to create an email-driven workflow. You could have a user send an email into server, and you can keep track of who sent it so that you can send an email back to that user whenever processing is finished. Some other useful information that can come through is shown here on this page. This actually keeps track of the attachments that were on the email. So one other option, something else you could do here, is actually attach, say, a data file to an email, send that into FME server, and have a workspace run and read in the content that was included as an attachment into a workspace and do some processing with that. So that's good in the case of maybe creating something like a data validation workflow. Instead of having users upload their data sets through the server web interface, you could have them simply email their data sets to the server and have the same validation occur in response to that. Okay, so we're going to take a look at exercise 4C now, and that's on page 4-24. And we're going to modify a workspace to actually make use of the information that comes in from the email that we send into our server. So what we're going to use here is a workspace that's very similar to the one that we built up in the last chapter. So in the last chapter, remember we had built up a workspace in which our users could select, we created a data download portal where users could select a neighborhood that they're interested in downloading raster data for, and they could choose to overlay different lines and all that to create raster output that they can use later on. So in this case, we're just going to do a very similar workflow. We're going to have a workspace that can download raster data for our users, except in this case, instead of having our users run the workspace through the web interface, we're actually going to have them send an email into FME server and have the data download process happen through that. So in this case, what we want to do is instead of having our users select from a series of published parameters, we're going to have them send an email, and in the subject line, they can put the name of the neighborhood that they're interested in downloading data for. So they're going to send an email to the server with the subject line of, say, Kitsilano. That email is going to go into the server. We're going to have a workspace read that information in, take that subject line, do a test, grab all the data that's related to that neighborhood, say Kitsilano in this case, create a raster dataset or create a raster file, and send an email back to the user so they can download the output of that translation. So with that, let's start working on building the workspace to control this data download workflow. So we're going to start with a starting workspace that's already been built up for us. So we can find that in the location specified in exercise 4C, and that's on page 4-24. So I can open that up. Actually, let's go into Workbench here. I'm going to go to File, Open. And then from Favorites, I'll just go to FME Data 2014. I'll go to the Workspaces folder and go into Server Training. And we'll look for exercise 4C begin. And the one I want here is the 4C begin email publication. So select that, 4C begin email publication.fmw, and we'll open that up. Okay, so this workspace is already mostly completed for us. So you can see it's very similar to that last one that we'd built up in chapter 3. We've got our GeoTIFF reader pulling in all the GeoTIFF files. We've got our Vancouver neighborhoods KML reader pulling in the outlines of all the neighborhoods. And then we've got those coming in. We've reprojected the KML, and we're clipping to the area of interest and writing that out to a JPEG this time. So what we want to do next is actually pull in the information from our notification content and use that inside our workspace. So before we had our users selecting their neighborhood by using a choice published parameter in the workspace. Now we're actually just going to take it from the notification content instead. So the first modification we need to make is to add in a reader to pull in the notification content. So we're going to add a text line reader into our workspace. So go up to the top menu, select Readers, and we'll choose to add a reader. So the format here will be text file. And for dataset, since we need a sample dataset in order to add our reader in, we can use a sample JSON file that has the same structure as the notification content that we're going to be reading in eventually. So from dataset, click the Browse button. And we'll go to Favorites, FME Data 2014. Look for the Resources folder. And we'll head into finding the email imap.json file. You'll notice you probably don't see it there, and that's because the filter for this is set to .txt. So click the filter in your file browser and choose All Files. And we should see the email imap.json and an email.json file. You can choose either one of those, it's the same structure. So I'll go with imap, and then we'll open that. We need to adjust one parameter before we add in this reader. So go into the Parameters button and click Read Whole File at Once, and we want to make sure that's set to Yes. So when that's set to No, this reader is going to read one line at a time. When it's set to Yes, it'll actually take the full text and pull that into an attribute all at once. That's what we want in this case, since we're going to be parsing that out as JSON. Reading one line at a time will cause problems in our workflow. So make sure Read Whole File at Once is set to Yes. Click OK, and OK again to add the reader. So you should have your text line feature type added to the workspace. And we'll connect that to the JSON flattener that's already here. So I'll just walk you through what's happening in the rest of this workspace now. So we have this text line reader that's configured to read in JSON. We have a JSON flattener that can take the text that this reader pulls into the workspace. So it's taking that text from the text line data attribute, and it's flattening everything. So it's basically taking the JSON text, so something like this, and creating individual attributes for each one of these entries. And then under attributes to expose, we have all the attributes that we want to be making use of inside our workspace. So these are all the attributes that would be sent in from that JSON notification. So now that those are exposed, we can make use of them in the rest of the workspace. So we have an attribute renamer here. That's just taking the information. So depending on which protocol we had selected before, if it was IMAP or email, we can grab the subject line and copy that into a new attribute. In this case, we're interested in the subject line because this is what we want our users to be using to specify the neighborhood they're interested in. So the subject line in this case would be text containing information about which neighborhood they want to download for. We're using an unconditional feature merger here to actually take the neighborhood name that was selected through the subject line and copy that onto each of the neighborhood polygons coming in from the KML file, so that when we send those features into the tester, we can actually test to see where the neighborhood name for that polygon matches the neighborhood name that was requested in the subject line of the email. So this way, this test will only pass for the polygon that the user had selected through the subject line of their email. And then the rest of the workflow is the same as before. It sends that neighborhood in and clips the raster to the area of interest. Okay, so with that, let's save a copy of this workspace. I'll just put this into the output folder. And let's publish this up to FME server. So go to File, Publish to FME server. We'll use the direct connection, localhost, admin. I'm just going to shorten this name a little bit. So I'll call this exercise 4C. Double check the uploaded data files, so click Select Files. We don't need to select any of the TIFFs, and we don't want to publish the JSON or the .txt files for the source. We're going to be overriding the source dataset for our text line reader with the content of the notification later on, so we don't need to worry about those files. So make sure the only file that you're uploading to the repository is the vancouverneighborhoods.kml file. And click OK when you've done that. And OK one more time on the next to verify the file references. They're OK as they are. And we'll click Next to go to the next step of publishing. And at this stage, we want to register with the notification service. So you can register with the data download and all the others as well if we want, so I'll just leave those there for now. And under the notification service, click on Edit under Properties. And let's verify this is set up correctly. So under Subscribe to Topics, we want this registered to listen to the image processing topic. So that's correct. Under the Notification Data Reader, we want to tell FME Server that the notification content should be passed into the text line reader. So that should be set to email IMAP text line. Okay, so once you verify that those are correct, click OK, and let's click Publish to publish this up to FME Server. Again, we'll get this error message, and that's okay to ignore for now. Okay, so let's open up the server web interface. And just to verify that everything was okay there, we can go into Notifications. And we can double check that our subscription was created. So we should see now we have a subscription for exercise 4B, also subscribed to the image processing topic. So that's okay there. I'm going to open up my topic monitoring again just to keep track of what's happening. And let's send an email into the server again and test out our new workflow. So open up your email application. We can send to the same email as before, This time, however, make sure you put a subject line. So here, because our workflow is expecting a neighborhood name to be included in the subject, let's put in a proper neighborhood name for the city of Vancouver. So I'm going to request downtown. So the exercise here recommends that you enter either downtown or West End. Those will give you the best results due to the TIFF files that are being read in by this workspace. So type in the name of the neighborhood. So I've chosen downtown here, and now I'm sending in this email. So I can watch the topic monitoring just to see when that comes through. It'll take a second or two to process and be received. And there we go. So I can double check. The email publisher subject came through as downtown. And now if I go back, I can go into my job history and check to see what happened there. I should see exercise 4C was run. And let's take a look inside. And I should see it was successful and one feature was written. And that looks good. So this part of this workflow is working. Okay, so I'll just do one more quick check. Was everyone able to see that workspace triggered as expected? You please raise your hand if it did work for you. All right, fantastic. Thank you. Okay, so that is one half of this workflow done. So the next piece that we want to add in is for the ability for this workspace to take the output from this translation and return that back to me as the user who sent in an email. So we're going to work on building up the rest of this workflow now. So let's take a look at a few pieces that we're going to need in order to build this out. So we're on page 4-28 if you are following along. So we're going to take a look at email subscriptions. So here an email subscription allows for FME server to send out an email in response to a topic being triggered. The built-in email server on FME server will only work for accepting incoming emails. So any outgoing emails need to be sent using an existing SMTP email server. So you won't be able to use the built-in one for sending out emails. So for this, you're actually going to have to connect to an email server that already exists and has been pre-configured. So the settings for creating an email subscription in FME server involve setting up the SMTP server name and giving all the connection information for the server to be able to log into the email account and send out an email from that. So the components needed here, we have a topic that's subscribed to. So the subscription is listening for any traffic on this particular topic that's been set. So here we've got road conditions outgoing. When that topic is triggered, it can send an email by connecting to my email server using my email account with this password, and it'll send out an email containing information that's set out in the rest of the parameters here. So you notice in this case that the email subject and format and all that aren't actually filled in. So the reason for that here is that these fields don't actually need to be hard-coded. So you can hard-code them if you want. So if you want to send out a standard email whenever this particular topic is triggered, you can set that up from in here. But if you want to, say, change the subject line or change the email recipient depending on who sent it in and what happened inside a workspace, you can actually choose to set these dynamically as part of the workspace itself. So the workspace that triggers this can actually create notification content that can fill in these blanks dynamically. And we'll take a look at how to do that when we go into building up the rest of our workflow. So the other piece that we're going to need for being able to finish off our workflow here is looking at using workspaces as a publication. So using a workspace to send a notification out to a topic, which can then send some kind of notification through a subscription. So it's using a workspace to trigger a notification. So when used in this way, you can have a workspace trigger a topic when it's finished running. In this case, the message that's being published to this topic, so the message content, can be created from inside the workspace and then passed on to the subscription through the topic. So using a workspace in this way is useful for creating messages with content that comes from the data being processed, or for sending out notifications depending on the status of a translation. So you can send out different notifications from the same workspace if the workspace runs successfully, or if that workspace fails for any reason. So the way to create that message content that's going to be published up to the topic that the workspace is triggering is by using a writer inside that workspace. So again, in this case, the typical writer that you would use for this would be a text line writer that can create any kind of arbitrary text. You can then configure the workspace when you go to publish it to tell FME server that any content that's written out through this particular text line writer should be used as the content that's going to be published up to the topic that the workspace is publishing to. So you can see that in here when you're registering the workspace with the notification service, or with actually with any other service. You can choose which topic you want to publish to on success or failure. And the notification writer here is the setting that'll tell FME server which writer in the workspace is actually creating the notification content. So just a note on that, I'm just going to open up the publish dialog here. Just go through to the end. You'll see we saw this in the notification service when we go to register the workspace with that service. We have these topics to post on success or failure. This is called data to post now, so it doesn't quite match up the screenshot in the training manual, but it's the same setting there. It just says which writer is actually creating the notification content. So we see that in the notification service, but those settings for sending a notification when the workspace finishes are actually available on any of the other services as well. So if I go into data streaming, for example, and open up the notify on job completion, you can see we have post to topic on success or failure and data to post as well. So any workspace registered with pretty much any one of the services in FME server can be used to send out a notification when it's finished. Okay, so in this page, it just goes into some details on how to create a notification that can be sent out from a workspace. So in this particular case, as I'd mentioned earlier with the email subscriptions, you can create notification content that can dynamically fill in those parameters, say for the email to and for the subject line and all that. And the way that's done is by sending out notification content in a specific format with some specific keywords inside of it that the email subscription can actually see and recognize, and it can pull in that information and make use of it when it sends out that email. So in this case, if you are sending an email using JSON content created within the workspace, you can just make sure to set up keywords like this. You've got your email to, and you can send the email out to any user that you select within your workspace. So you can just build this up dynamically inside the workspace itself. So you can see here, this is an example of creating that JSON within an attribute creator transformer. So you have the email to is coming from an attribute that is inside the workspace. So this could come from, say, the email to field, or it could come from the email field that maybe you pulled in from a notification, so you know one particular user sent an email into server. You can take their email address, copy that into an attribute, and then use that on the other end to send an email back to the user that originally sent the email in. So another method, so we just looked at how to publish notifications to topics from a workspace when you go to register the workspace with FME Server. That sends the notification out after the workspace has finished running, so after you know if the workspace succeeded or failed. If you need to send out a notification during the flow of the workspace itself, so if you want to send out a notification, say, before the workspace is finished running, you can also do this, and this is done by using a transformer within the workflow itself. So we have a specific transformer that's designed for that. It's called the FME Server Notifier Transformer. And what that can do is it basically works in the same way as what we've seen when publishing the workspace. You connect to your server, either username and password, and then you can choose which topic you want to publish to and what kind of content you want to be sending into that topic. So again, this content can either be hard-coded or it can come from any attributes inside the workspace itself. So this is just a transformer that can send a notification up to the server and trigger a topic while the rest of the workspace is still running. So the advantages of doing this, first of all, is you can send a notification during the translation rather than waiting till the end of it. And then secondly, the workspace itself doesn't actually even need to be run on FME Server in order to generate an FME Server notification. So what you can do is you can have these FME Server notifiers in your workflow and run your workspace on FME Desktop and send a notification up to FME Server if you wanted. So it gives a little bit of extra flexibility in that way. So again, we've got a diagram very similar to what we'd looked at a little bit earlier in this chapter. And this is the concept of using a workspace as both a subscription and a publication. So essentially, by doing this, you can create a system that looks something like this. So you've got a publication that sends notification up to a topic, which can then trigger a workspace in response to that. When the workspace is finished, it can send another notification out to a second topic, which can then trigger some other kind of action in the form of a subscription on the other end. One important note for this type of scenario, if you're going to be creating a workspace that is both listening for traffic on a topic and sending information out to a topic, is that you need to make sure that you have two different topics used. So here, in this case, it's topic 1 and topic 2. If you used the same topic for both, you could get stuck in a bit of a loop. So if you had topic 1 triggered, and then you had the workspace also trigger topic 1, what would happen is you'd have your publication, it would trigger topic 1, the workspace would run and trigger topic 1 again, which would then cause the workspace to run again, and you'd be stuck continually going around. So it's just good to make sure you always use different topics if you're going to be doing a workflow like this. Okay, and so with that, we're going to move on to exercise 4D now, and that's on page 4-34. So we're going to expand the workflow that we've been creating, and we're now going to configure the workspace we've been building to send an email back to the user who requested the data. And that email is going to contain the data itself. So let's work on that. So in this case, we're going to be working with a starting workspace again. So we've got a workspace already configured that has a lot of the work done for us. So we'll just make use of that as a starting point. So let's go into FME Workbench, go to File, and Open. And we'll go back to Favorites, FME Data 2014. Go into the Workspaces folder. And we'll open up the server training and look for exercise 4D. And for this one, it'll be exercise 4D begin, and that's the email subscriber version. So exercise 4D begin -email subscriber.fmw. So we'll open that up. And the workspace will look something like this. So it's pretty similar to the workspace that we've been building again, except if we move over toward the other side, we'll see a couple little changes that have been made. So first one, we have a UUID generator that's being used after the Clipper transformer now. And basically all that's doing is it's creating a unique ID that is used in the JPEG writer. So if I go into JPEG writer under advanced here, you'll see it's got a fan out data set that's set up now. And basically all this is doing is, instead of just creating the same JPEG file over and over again, it's creating the JPEG file, but putting it in a directory with a unique ID on it. So the reasoning for this, since we're creating new directories every time this workspace is run, the reason for this is if we have several users all sending in emails to request their data, if we have two send them in at once, we don't want these to get overwritten, so we want to make sure that the path that they're written out to is always a unique path. So that's what that's guaranteeing in this case. Okay, so what we want to do now is configure this to be able to send an email back to the user who sent the original email in. So the first step for this will be to create a second topic for this workspace to trigger when it finishes running. So let's open up our web browser now and head over to the FME server web interface and go into notifications. And we're going to create a new topic. So click on the Topics tab and choose the New button. Under topic name, we're going to call this Send Email. We can give this a description if we'd like. Topic to trigger an email using an email subscription. Once you've finished with that, click OK. And then we're going to work on creating an email subscription. So this subscription is going to be used to actually send the email itself out. So click on the Subscriptions tab and then choose New from here. So we're going to call our subscription Email Sender. For topic subscribe to, we're going to link this into the topic we just created. So click on that to select, and we'll choose the Send Email topic. So whenever something sends information to the Send Email topic, this subscription is going to be triggered in response. So under Protocol, we're going to select the Email protocol here. So we want an email to be sent out whenever that topic is triggered. And then next, we're going to fill in the parameters to connect to our SMTP server. So in this case, you're going to have to use an email SMTP server that you have access to yourself. So simplest thing to do, if you happen to have a Gmail account, you can put in your credentials for your own Gmail account here. And what will happen here is when this subscription gets triggered, FME server is going to log in using the credentials that you enter into this page, and it's going to send the email out from that email account. So again, if you're using Gmail, all the connection parameters are in here for that. If you're using something like Outlook or Yahoo, if you have accounts for either of those, you can make use of those as well. So just give you some time for that. I'm going to use a Gmail account for mine here. So for my SMTP server, I'm just going to put in the Gmail one. So smtp.gmail.com. The Gmail port for connecting this way is 465. And the account I'm going to use is an FME server account at safe.com. And I'll put in my password. Connection security for Gmail will be SSL. And then I can leave everything else blank for the most part. So for email from, I'll just put the same email address. And the subject is attached. And then I'll leave the email format as text. So I'll just give you a minute or two to enter in your own credentials. So this will be for an SMTP or an email account that you have access to yourself. And you notice in here, since we're leaving the email to field blank, we're going to have to set that dynamically using the workspace. We're going to use notification content to populate these fields dynamically, depending on who sends the email in. So once you've finished filling in your account details, click OK to create the new subscription. So we should now have a subscription in here called Email Sender, the email protocol, and subscribe to the send email topic. So with that, let's head back to our workspace now, and we're going to configure this to create notification content that can then fill in the blanks for the rest of those fields for our email service. So we can do this using an FME server email generator transformer to build up the JSON that will be included in the notification content. So this transformer is a custom transformer that's available from the FME store. This is a free transformer that you can download. And it simply builds up the JSON text for the notification and just makes it easier to do this. You could do this yourself in something like an attribute creator or a JSON templater transformer, but this is a good shortcut. So I'll type that in. So if you type in the name of the transformer, FME server email generator, and you can download this from the store. So you see the transformer is green, indicating it's a custom transformer. And we'll connect this into the workflow immediately after the UUID generator. And it's going to be connected in parallel to the writer. So from the output port, just draw a second connection from the UUID generator to the FME server email generator. So you should see a branch now, one going to the writer and one going into this transformer. And then next, let's set up these transformer properties. So click on the red properties button or the red cogwheel on this transformer, and we'll configure this to fill in the email details that we're going to be sending out. So for the to field, let's click the drop-down arrow, and we'll go to select from an attribute value. And the attribute we'll select is the Clipper email publisher from. So under attribute value, look for Clipper email publisher from. This is the attribute that contains the email address of the person who sent the email that triggered this workspace. So this lets us send an email back to that same user. Next, what we want to do is configure the attachments. So what we want to do is attach the data set that's created by this workspace to this email. This data set, this writer is configured to write this data out to the shared or to the resources section or the resources folder in FME server. So we want to tell this transformer to take the path to the resources on the server and copy the output file from this translation into the email that's being sent out. So under the attachments field at the bottom, we're going to click the drop-down arrow, and we're going to use a text editor to build up the path to the file that's been created. So use the drop-down and choose Open Text Editor. So the path is a little bit complex. You can see it here on page 4-36 in the training manual. So the first piece is going to be the path to the shared resources folder on the server. This is stored in a published parameter inside this workspace. So we'll grab that first part of the path first. So under the string expression, look for private parameters, and you'll see a parameter in here called FME shared resource data. Double-click on that to copy that into the text editor. So it should look something like this now. We'll add in a /, and we want this to go into the output folder inside there. So just type in output as the name of that folder, and do another /. Because each of these JPEG files is being written to its own unique folder with that UUID generator, we want to take the UUID attribute that's created inside this workspace and use that inside this path as well. So we'll take that from the attribute value. So under FME feature attributes here, let's expand the list and look for the one called _UUID. Double-click on that to add that into our text field. So it'll look like this, at value brackets UUID in the middle. Then we'll do one final /, and we'll copy the file itself. All these files are hard-coded to be called airphotomosaic.jpg, so we'll type that in, airphotomosaic, SAIC.jpg. So when you're finished, your text editor should look like this. You might be able to copy this out of the authoring manual itself if you wanted to try that as well. And just copy and paste that into here. So when you're finished, click OK to close this dialog. And let's fill in the rest of the other fields. We don't need to CC anyone. The from is already populated in our subscription, so we'll leave that blank. And the same with the reply to. We don't need to set that right now. So the only other two pieces we need to set are the subject line. So their email subject will be your image order is attached. And then we can include a message in that email. Please find attached the image you requested. And once you've finished that, click OK. And the final step here will be to add in a writer to create the notification content itself. So we're going to do this by adding a second writer into our workspace. So from the top menu, click on Writers, Add Writer. The format we'll use in this case is a text file. So go Text File Writer. And we'll temporarily set the data set to our output folder. So click the File Browse button. We'll go to Favorites, FME Data 2014, Output, and we'll just call this email.json. So this notification is writing out JSON text. If it has that little .txt on the end, you can just get rid of that. And when you're done, click OK. And that'll add in the feature type. And there we are, text line. And connect the input for the text line writer to the output on the FME server email generator. And now we're finished, so we can save the workspace. And now let's publish this up to FME server. So go to the File menu and click Publish to FME server. We'll use the same connection information. Again, I'm just going to shorten this name, exercise 4D. I'm going to double check the files that are being uploaded, so go to Select Files and make sure only the Vancouver Neighborhoods.kml file is selected. Everything else is already available on the server, so we'll leave that all blank. Once you're uploading only one file, that KML file, click OK. OK to verify these paths. And then we'll go Next. So for this workspace, since we want it to listen for an incoming email that's triggering the incoming topic, and then we want this workspace to run based on that topic information and publish information out to a second topic. So we want to make sure that when we register this with the notification service, it's registered as both a publisher and a subscriber. So click on the Edit button under Properties for the notification service. Make sure the subscribe to topic is sent to email processing. The notification data reader is the text line reader in this workspace that's copying in the notification content that's sent up to the image processing topic. And then expand the Notify on Job Completion section. We should have here set up Post to Topics on Success. So we want this workspace to publish information to the send email topic when it's done. And the data that it's going to be publishing to this topic will be the data that's created from our email text line writer. So once you've verified these settings are correct, you can click OK and then Publish to publish this workspace. And now let's try running this workflow one more time. So open up your web browser or your email application, and let's send another email into the server. So we can compose and send that into my username at myamazonmachine.com, and make sure your subject line is either downtown or west end. So I'm going to go downtown again. And send that email in. This time round, since we have our workspace registered as both a publisher and a subscriber, it's going to be triggered by this email that we're sending in, and then it's going to send an email back to me containing the data set that was created inside that workspace. So this might take a second or two before it comes back. I can double check through the monitoring. So we saw the image processing topic get triggered here. So that means the email was received. The workspace is currently taking that information, parsing it out, writing out the raster data set, and then it's going to send another notification to that second topic, that send email topic, which will then trigger my email subscription, which then sends an email back to me. So I can see my inbox now has 3. I have an email here, your image order is attached. So if I open this up, I should see a JPEG file attached to this containing information for the area of downtown Vancouver. So that was that entire workflow. So this is a fully email-driven workflow using FME server in the back end. So I can email some information to the server, have a workspace run, and have the server send an email back with the information that I requested. Okay, so at this stage, I'll just do one final check. Was everyone able to get that working? Can you please raise your hand if you did receive an email back with the data set attached? If not, please feel free to send us a question through the questions panel. We can help you take a look into that. All right. Good, okay. So please feel free to let us know if you do have any questions on this workflow. I think at this stage it's time for another break. So let's stop now for 10 minutes, and then we'll come back at about 10:50 Pacific time, and we'll continue on and finish off the notification section of the server training. So we'll stop for 10 minutes now, and we'll come back at about 10:50 Pacific time. Okay, so we're back again, and we'll just continue on with finishing off this chapter on the notification service inside FME Server. So we've just finished building up a workflow in which our users can send an email in to FME Server with a subject line containing the name of the neighborhood they'd like to download their data for, have a workspace run that can take that subject line, copy that in, do some processing with it, and create output containing information for that particular neighborhood, and then take that information, attach it to an email, and send that back to the user who had originally requested that data set. So with that, let's continue on. We'll look at a few other concepts related to the notification service. So we're on page 4-39 if you're following along there. So we're just going to take a closer look at some of the other protocols that are available inside FME Server. So again, a protocol itself is a method through which FME Server and a client can communicate. So the table on this page lists all the protocols that are available in FME Server 2014. So you'll notice here, these check marks just indicate whether they're available as publications or subscriptions. You'll notice that some are only available as publications, so it's something like the IMAP protocol, and others are only available as subscriptions, so that's something like the Logger or the FTP protocol. So let's take a closer look at some of the more important protocols over the next few pages. So this is the full list here with just some descriptions of what those protocols are and kind of what they're about and what kind of information they can process. So some of the more commonly used ones include things like the directory watch protocol. So the directory watcher, it's one of those protocols that, where is it here, is available only as a publication. So this can only be used to take information from some other source and send a notification into FME Server. So the way the directory watch protocol works is that it's kind of similar to the IMAP protocol in that it can monitor something for new activity. So what it can do here is the directory watch protocol can be configured to watch a specific directory, say on one of the FME Server resource folders. And when you've set it up to watch that folder, you can basically tell FME Server to pay attention to any activity on that folder. If a new file is added, if a file is modified, or if a file is deleted, it will take information about that and publish a notification up to the topic that this protocol is registered with. So basically what you can do with this is have FME Server watch a directory, and then when something happens inside that directory, you can have a workspace that can run and say read in a new file and run maybe some data validation or copy that somewhere else, or you can have it just take some action in response to some kind of change within that directory. So the notification content that's included when the directory watch protocol triggers a notification is very similar to what's shown on this page here. So you see the content. It tells you what happened. So in this case, a file was modified. And then it tells which file was touched, so which file was affected by this change. So for any type of modification, you'll see entry delete or entry added or updated or something like that, or entry new. And you'll see the name of the file that was either deleted or the file that was added or any of that. So you can actually take this information and maybe run a workspace that can read in the modified file and check to see what changed and make sure that change was valid and that you have the most up-to-date version of any new information that was added in there, say in your centralized database or something along those lines. Another type of protocol that's of note would be protocols for dealing with mobile notifications. So we have a few subscription-only protocols, so protocols that can only send notifications from FME Server out to an external client. So the two protocols involved for mobile are the Apple push notifications and the Google Cloud messaging protocol. So Apple Push can be used to send notifications out to an Apple device, so something like an iPhone. And the Google Cloud messaging would do the same for an Android device. So you could basically create an application that can listen for any notifications coming from FME server and send a notification directly to the phone, and you can see this on your mobile device. So an example here is you can maybe push alerts out to a phone based on local traffic conditions. So if a user gets to a specific area, you can get a notification sent directly to their phone from FME server to give them some information about that. So for this, we actually have 2 free apps within FME that you can use if you wanted to test out these protocols. So you have the FME Reporter and the FME Alerts app. So those are both available either on the iTunes or the Google Play Store if you wanted to check those out yourself. Okay, so that's everything about the notification service that we're going to cover today. The next part of real-time with real-time and FME server that we're going to look at is the idea of message streaming. So just a little reminder of what message streaming is all about. So we looked at notifications, which were able to take individual discrete messages that come through one at a time. What message streaming is in this case is a real-time technique that involves keeping track of a continuous flow of information. So in this case, the word continuous essentially just means messages that can arrive to FME server at a rate that would be faster than the notification service could handle. So it'd be something like maybe more than 1 message per second or even higher than that. In this case, if you're using this to deal with messages that come in at a very high frequency, we could call this high-capacity message streaming. So it can deal with thousands of individual messages that can be processed every second. So the elements of a message stream, so you can see this just a little diagram of what the message streaming process would look like. It's fairly straightforward and kind of similar to the way the notifications work. So we have the sending applications that can send a message stream into FME server, and then we have receiving applications that can receive a stream of messages from FME server. So this is supported by a number of transformers that are created to be able to continuously monitor a particular stream to either send or receive messages that are coming in from that message stream. We support 3 key protocols, JMS, so Java Messaging Services, HTML5 WebSockets, and TCP. And those protocols are supported using a set of transformers named accordingly. So we have the JMS sender and receiver, the WebSocket receiver and sender, and the TCP IP receiver and sender transformers as well. Each of these transformers works in basically the same way. They simply connect to different types of message streaming services. So this is essentially what the architecture might look like. So you've got your message stream that comes in. It can be received into a workspace that's running on FME server or on FME Workbench itself. It goes in, that transformer is continuously listening for messages. When a new message comes in through that stream, it grabs that message and pushes it out into the rest of the flow of the workspace, so it can push it out to any one of the other transformers that you've placed inside the workspace. And then on the other side, a similar process can happen. You can have any one of the message streaming sender transformers set up to continuously wait for features to come in and continuously send out messages as those features come through as they're processed by the rest of the workspace. So it can send those messages out through a particular stream and send them out to an application that can listen on that stream and take that data in and do something with that. So with that, let's take a look at another exercise to try out the message streaming inside FME. So we'll just work through this one quickly. So we have a starting workspace that's already been built up, so we'll just take a look at some of the transformers inside here. This message streaming service that we're going to be building up is going to be using WebSockets, so it's the HTML5 WebSockets. the concepts here would be basically the same for any of the other protocols that we'd support. So with that, let's open up FME Workbench and take a look at the workspace for this. So open up Workbench and we'll go to File and then Open. So go to Favorites, FME Data 2014. We'll go into the Workspaces and open up the Server Training folder. And we'll look for exercise 4E Begin. And it's 4E Begin WebSockets. Let's open that up. And we'll take a look inside here. So what we have here is a workflow. It's triggered by a creator transformer. So this just creates a single arbitrary feature that's used to start up the WebSocket receiver transformer. What the WebSocket receiver transformer does, let's open up the parameters here and take a look, is it'll connect to a specific URL, the WebSocket server URL. In here in the connection preamble, it just defines which stream we're listening for. So within WebSockets, every stream has a specific ID, so we're looking for a stream with the ID called points. This transformer is going to connect to that stream and basically sit there and wait. It's going to listen for any incoming traffic. So it's just simply going to sit there connected to the stream forever and listen for any information that's coming in from some other application that can send information into the stream. So just waiting. Whenever information comes in on the stream, it's going to take that and push it out into the rest of the workspace. So in this particular situation, this is connecting to a WebSocket stream. Let's take a look at the server URL here. This is one that's hosted within FME Server. So FME Server has a built-in WebSocket server. So we're connecting to that. So we have an application that's able to create information. In this case, it's creating points, and it's sending that point information across to this workspace through the WebSocket's point stream. This workspace reads in that information. It takes the points information and builds up an actual point geometry inside the workspace. So it grabs that, pulls out the relevant pieces, creates the point, and we use an offsetter transformer to basically offset this by 0.05 ground units. It then takes that offset point, extracts the coordinates, and then on the other side, we're using a WebSocket sender transformer to take those coordinates we've just created and send them out through WebSockets on another stream. So if I open up the parameters here, I'm connecting to the same WebSocket server. And this time I'm connecting to a stream ID called displaced points. And the data to transmit comes from those lat-long values from the offsetter transformer. So essentially what this workspace is doing is it's connecting to a WebSocket stream, listening for points, taking that information, offsetting it, and sending the offset point back through WebSockets along another stream. So with that, I'm just going to run this workspace from the desktop. We'll take a look at what the behavior looks like here. So we'll see, it takes a second. We're starting up the translation. And you'll see here at this stage, this workspace has connected to the WebSocket stream. So it's connected to that remote host, the local host 7078, so that's WebSockets. And it's just sitting there waiting for incoming WebSocket messages now. If I was to walk away and leave this workspace, it would continue running forever. So it's just going to sit here and wait until I actually come in and stop the workspace itself. So that's what this is designed for. It just continually waits. It's always connected. And anytime new information comes through, it simply takes that and pushes it in through the rest of the workspace immediately. So there's no time wasted starting up the workspace, running things, and shutting down again. It's always connected and always ready. So let's test this out. So what we have to do this, if we continue on, we have a web application that's been built specifically for this particular exercise in which we can actually send points in through this point stream ID. So let's open that up and I'll just take you quickly through what that application looks like. So I'm just going to open up my Windows Explorer. I'm going to go into Favorites, FME Data 2014. And let's go into the Resources folder. And we'll go into WebSockets. And then www. And the application here is called index.html. So I'm just going to open this up in a text editor to show you what it looks like. You don't necessarily have to follow along for this part. So for here, this is what it is. It's just a little tutorial for WebSockets. In here, it's just HTML for the most part. And at the top here, I'm just going to show you this application is connecting to WebSockets. It's connecting to our FME server WebSocket server. On one side, it's opening up a connection to the point stream. And what happens here is it's connected to the stream. And whenever a user clicks on a point in a web map that's going to be displayed in this application, it takes the coordinates of that point and sends it into this message stream. And then, since we have our workspace currently sitting there listening for any activity in this point stream, the workspace is going to pull in that information, displace it, and send it back along the displaced point stream. You'll see this application is also connected to the displaced point stream. And what it does is it listens for any information coming in from there, and then it can actually display the displaced point that came from FME, from the FME workspace. So that's the basics of what's happening inside there. So now you can open up the index.html file. Just double click on it to open it in Chrome. And let's test this out. So you can see here we've got a web map. So it's a Google map on here. We've got a list of any messages that are being sent and any messages that might be received. So if we click anywhere on this map, since this application is connected to the points stream, when we click here, it's going to send that information through the points WebSocket stream. The FME workspace that we have connected to that is going to read that in, displace the point, send it back through the other stream, and this application is going to display that displaced point. So you can see whenever I click on here, the displaced point appears almost immediately in the web application. So if I move that over, and we take a look at FME server here, you'll see we were sitting here before we were waiting for incoming WebSocket messages. And you'll notice that we've now seen some activity happen inside here. So if I sit here and I watch, so if I click on my map, you'll see this change here in my workspace. So this workspace is actually grabbing this information as it comes in with very little delay. So it's actually just sitting here and watching this come in as these points are clicked. So this is almost instantaneous message passing. So it's actually able to grab this information as it comes through and send it back almost immediately on the other side. So that's just an example of what this type of message streaming might look like. So this is high capacity message streaming inside FME. So the way it would work is when you configure a transformer like the WebSocket receiver or the JMS receiver or the TCP/IP receiver, you would actually start up a workspace. You can either run this on the desktop like this. You'll start up the workspace and it'll run forever and always listen for new messages. So this is very fast, but it will always need to run this way. So what you can do here is if you wanted to take this workspace, you could publish it up to FME server. When you start up the workspace, it'll continuously run again. When on FME server, it'll continuously take up a single engine. So for as long as this runs, it will always use up one engine on your server. The benefit there is that you do offload this, this work to another machine, so you don't have to have FME desktop running on your own machine continuously, but it will take up an engine. So that's something to keep in mind if you're going to be setting up a workflow like this. All right, so that's the basics of message streaming. There is an advanced task here where you actually take this workspace and publish it up to FME server, but I'm going to skip over that for now. It works in basically the same way, except you'll see that the engine is always running when this workspace is going, so you can see it in the running jobs if you check the job history on FME server.